1192, there's a new draft coming out fairly soon, and we've moved the prefix CIC in front of BIM protocol, so that they don't reference the CIC BIM protocol. That's the proposal. Do you think this is a good or bad thing? And to give you reasons why for that answer.
You want to speak that one up?
I'm happy to.
Okay, Simon.
Well, I haven't seen the new draft pass. When it's due, so perhaps May has. I wouldn't think there's any particular problem with removing the CIC part of it. I suppose it's, as a standard, it should try to allow for other versions of protocols, etc. As we discussed this morning, there are obviously some gaps in CIC protocols that's drafted at the moment, and maybe other ones will deal more effectively. So I suspect it's to allow more flexibility in relation to the possible protocols. So I don't think it's too much of a problem. I wouldn't say.
I have read the draft, and I think it's probably a good thing, because the trouble with specifying the CIC BIM protocol is the reality very few people are using it unamended, or in fact using it at all. So it avoids the mindset of, oh, we can't use PAS 1192 because we're not using the CIC BIM protocol. It enables people to use the PAS 1192 as a guideline with whatever protocol they happen to be using, because the majority, as I mentioned, are using their own protocol. You'll find, for example, online, Paul Lee, which is obviously a major consultant, had their BIM protocol, I think, on their website, and various others do as well, and they bear absolutely no resemblance to the CIC BIM protocol.
PAS PAS 1192, you mentioned the RAI have accepted that as being the standard for pilot projects, and the CIC BIM protocol master delivery plan are all structured around 8 work stages, 0 to 7, which are not aligned with the public works contract and not easily aligned. Most of the BIM requirements we see coming out of projects like GD, Range Gorman, etc., all requiring level 2 BIM, all suggesting PAS 1192, which are working to one set of work stages, a different set of work stages in the protocol.
Yes, and that was the reason that I mentioned the Cabinet Works framework, because obviously PwC contracts are part of that, and they have their own stages and their own process around the full implementation of the PwC. So I think that's possibly behind the fact that the aspect of BIM has been put for a further, more comprehensive review in relation to the contracts, because they have to look at the wider implications, including the Capital Works framework. And maybe it'll involve a rewrite of that framework to involve other work stages, or make it more compatible with different work stages. Maybe the plan of work, is it the RI, the REBA? And so they put together a new set of processes for the Capital Works Management Framework, but perhaps they want to revise that and try to take advantage of some of these other work stages that are out there and more widely used.
Alan Ford, DIT, CITA. First to say, I just congratulate the speakers on 3 really exceptional presentations. I won't say that lightly, that they really were top class. Thank you very much. And just really a more philosophical question: is the problem with BIM that we're trying to fit, BIM into a procurement landscape that it's not designed for? You're trying to work with BIM in a traditional context. CIC BIM protocol is sort of client, contractor, but really we should be working with BIM in a more collaborative environment. So it needs to be kind of re-looking at the whole way that we procure contracts, and then we use BIM. So we should be using it as a single point of responsibility, contractor-led, as opposed to more traditional procurement systems.
I think the problem with BIM, one of the first problems was the use of the term modelling. because it started out, people assumed it was about 3D modelling. It's a new type of procurement process. It's a new way of working, and it will require, in the long term, a wholesale, more collaborative process, ideally new types of contracts, multi-party collaboration, but it's at the moment a bit of a square peg round hole. We're working on using something completely new, has a lot of benefits, but using the old way of working. And it's a matter of no one's going to change overnight, and you'll probably find the new generation who grew up with computer games and sharing information, 20 years from now, they won't understand why we're making such a big fuss. But it will take that time to slowly change the processes. And until then, that's why people need clear contracts to almost force the change.
Alan, I think what you're touching on here is the intellectual exercise around the implementation of BIM. And in my view, the focus for BIM implementation has been more on the technical implementation and the almost a spiritual implementation of a partnering, collaborative way of working. But in fact, we need to map that. We need to think through how that's going to operate in the real world. And by the real world, I mean procurement requirements, the procurement law requirements which are imposed on us, the audit requirements that are imposed on us to ensure that we are compliant in a sequential way with how contracts are procured, and how we impose on ourselves protection of particularly SMEs, so that we understand how the market is going to evolve to deliver what will be level 4 or 5 BIM, not just what it'll look like at that time and a definition of different levels. And I think one of the key things that's missing from the definitions of, for example, level 1, 2, 3, 4, is just what the procurement exercise, what the law is going to say at each of those steps. And if we're not clear about it, then we're not able to train the human resources, the people that are going to administer that, so that they understand, okay, well in 2016, we're not going to be doing two-stage selective tendering anymore, we're going to be doing negotiated tendering. And it's going to operate in this way. And here's a pilot, and we're going to run this pilot now so that we can see how it operates, and that central government will ensure that all of its procurement moves away from that two-stage process. And I mean, that would be a seismic shift. I mean, the level of education that would be required for consultants and contractors who are still struggling with tendering on most economic value, not lowest price, is huge. And so that reality check just needs to be part of the BIM development, and it hasn't so far. It's not. I don't see that. I don't see that someone is sitting down properly testing it, because it's not easy to do. And it touches on the other questions we have here, where we see clients just cut and paste, bolt on protocols or aspects of what other people have done without really thinking through what the implications of them are. And procurement is just part of that.
Any more questions?
Sorry, just
sorry, Simon, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Comments on that point, Alan. I thought it was very well made, and I would just echo what James was saying in relation to culture, and I would point to the fact that when the PwC was first introduced, as you saw in my presentation, it was expected that the risk would be transferred to contractors with a high level of information being looked at, but there was no education or processes put in place to enable the high level of design information be put in early in the project. So people just did what they always did, which was give the contractor very little information when the project started, and so created huge problems.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably the same issues.
Question here.
guys. Michael Murphy, just a query, something kind of dawned on me throughout the presentation, May's presentation, in relation to where certain other documents will now reside. Am I wrong in assuming or taking from your presentation that you would suggest that a lot of the task information, delivery plans, model production, delivery tables, and things like that should now reside very firmly in the protocol document itself, as opposed to residing in around the execution plan? Does the protocol legitimise the execution plan contractually, where a lot of these issues around who's doing what, when they're doing it, and how it should be delivered, are kind of frameworked and defined? Or do you feel, am I taking that you feel that should sit within the protocol itself? I'm not sure where you were going with that, Mason.
It effectively, the BIM execution plan and the protocol will both be contract documents. Whether you have the protocol and then you have the execution plan as an appendix to the protocol, or you have Appendix 1 BIM protocol, Appendix 2 BIM execution plan. Either way, it doesn't actually, contractually, it won't make any difference because you will comply with all these documents. The important thing, however, is that the BIM protocol will necessarily need to make reference to the BIM execution plan, or at least not contradict it. So you'll have the BIM execution plan, which is all your more technical stuff, how you label files, that sort of thing. The BIM protocol will be risk allocation, the legal side of it. So that they're both complementary. It doesn't really impact whether it's where you place it, as long as they're both contractual documents and they work together.
Okay, so would it be fair to suggest then that the execution plan should then in fact deal with a lot of these contentious issues around interoperability, delivery timescales, construction programs, as deemed by Path 92, as it should do? So would that not close the loop in that regard, where these gaps apparently exist within the protocol? They don't, because the execution plan deals with them.
I would say the execution plan attempts to, but the way a lot of contracts drafted is that the execution plan isn't actually a contract document. So you have the protocol, which is in your contract, and then you have the execution plan, and people forget to close that loop. So you have the execution plan, which everyone's working to, which isn't necessarily that detailed, but it's also not contractually binding. So if you're using an execution plan, it's important to make sure it's a very complete technical document. Everyone has to do certain things. There's certain execution plans I've seen, one by a major contractor, and it said, the architect will do this, and then that was it. It didn't mention the contractor, the engineer. It was just people hadn't thought through each stage of the process, and that's also an important thing.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I'm going to take one more question because we have another presentation here to make today. So, one more question? I think you've already had one. There's one in the back there, the man in blue.
Derek Finnegan, Audit Solutions. We have developed a product that integrates fully with BIM, and we rely very heavily on the information that comes out of it. So I suppose the question is, from the UK point of view, how, to what extent do the participants rely on the model? And I suppose the second question is, what percentage of the BIM projects end up in a dispute?
Sorry, what the first question, to the extent what? Could you repeat it?
Yeah, to what extent do the participants on the project rely on the information coming out of the model?
Very much so, I would say. Even where they, in some respects, are probably not supposed to, because there's so much information which you wouldn't necessarily usually get. People are any information people get, they are necessarily using to their advantage. For example, if a contractor gets an architect's model, and the architect says, well, this is for this certain stage, the contractor will still use that to save them loads and loads of time in terms of their own construction models, their construction preparation. So I would say anywhere where there's BIM modelling or BIM information being exchanged, people are integrally relying on it, and that's currently a bit of a problem because a lot of contracts don't actually say how far you can rely on it. And what some designers are trying to do is strip out the information out of the model before they provide it, because you can't sort of label a model, you can't look at this bit, you just have to give it as is. And there is that contradiction, and that's why collaborative mindset's also very important to share information.
Right. We have another speaker here, Andrew Norrie, who's going to talk to us about Graphisoft. What I'd like to do before Andrew's talks is if everybody here will give us a round of applause for our three speakers for a very comprehensive review.